Nearly 1,500 bills were advanced out of committee last week at the Illinois Statehouse. There's no way we're going to be able to go through all of them, but there are some rising to the surface that might take interest. It also gives us a chance to talk more about shell bills. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, Associate Editor for the Center Square. You can catch us live here each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock Central Time on YouTube with the Center Square. So be sure to like, subscribe, and get notifications of when new content goes up, including the live show. So what I do is I track what happens at the Illinois Statehouse. I'm there on the ground, got a great team, even remote reporters helping tap in, and plenty of video coverage of committees and such. But there's so much activity that happens whenever they're in session. They'll have 12 different committees, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, and they're advancing bills through those committees. So Friday last week was the deadline for bills to get out of committee. So all of last week it was rapid fire with tons of legislation being debated and advanced out of various committees. All together, went back and did just a quick review, and on Tuesday of last week, they passed 90 bills out of committee. 90 different bills passed out of committees. When I saw that, I was like, that's a lot. Then I looked at Wednesday's list, and there were 1,136 bills that advanced out of committee. 1,136 bills. Then Thursday last week, only 157 bills. And then Friday, only 1 bill advanced out of committee. But this gives us an opportunity, I think, to look at what are we talking about here when there are 1,000+ bills moving out of committee. So this is the report that you can get from the Illinois General Assembly website, ilga.gov. And then on there, you'll find legislative reports. And then you can select the day under certain sections, and you could see which bills moved out of committee and the status of all these bills. So I'll have to do like a tutorial sometime for some of you out there that really want to do these deep dives yourself. But this is the report from the 19th. So this is, last Wednesday. And we'll just scroll all the way down to the bottom because there it is. All right. 1,136 bills. The Senate advanced 987 bills. What were all those bills? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. You've got Senate President Don Harmon with a very long list of bills. And you're just scrolling through here. These are shell bills. These are bills that the Senate President has advanced through committee dealing with different types of issues like public aid tech or military service tech. But when you click through one of these, we'll just do Senate Bill 663. All right, so you click through here and it just says it amends the Murdered Children Funeral and Burial Assistance Act, makes technical changes. But then when you click on the full text, you'll see here that all it's doing is it's crossing out a word. Oh, no, this is there it goes. It's crossing out a word and replacing it with the same word. That allows them to say this bill does something. We're going to get it through committee. That way, at the tail end of session, they can then take this bill and amend it, gut and replace it. It's already through a committee. Likely, this is going to pass the Senate over into the House. If the House picks up the bill and says, okay, we're going to gut this and replace it with something totally not in the subject matter of this, and then advance it back to the Senate and concurrence, and boom, we got legislation, we got law. So that's just kind of an indication of what a shell bill is. And again, Don Harmon has tons of these. It's not just the Republican, it's not just the Democrat rather, but you also have the Republican leader, John Curran, in the Senate with his own stack of shell bills. And again, just tons and tons of legislation. So that happens, right? And so it's one of those things, at least as a journalist, you got to stay on top of this because this allows for, at the tail end of session, controversial things, quite frankly, to be replaced into a bill that's already made it through part of the process so that they can then advance and pass legislation out of both chambers in a much shorter time frame than what they typically do. So just wanted to take that opportunity to talk about that just briefly here. All right, some of the other things I've compiled here No particular order per se, but these are just some of the bills that I think really rose to the surface from what they advanced last week. So, of course, we had the Homeschool Act that was very controversial, HB 2827, that's going to regulate homeschools. That we talked extensively about. One measure from the State Representative Justin Slaughter, House Bill 3496, Void Diversionary Program. What's this? So if we look at the synopsis of HB 3496, it says it amends the FOID Card Act, provides that a person charged with certain weapon-related offenses under the criminal code and sentenced to the first-time weapons offense program under the Unified Code of Corrections or any other court-ordered diversionary program created by law or by court of the state of Illinois may submit an application for a firearm owner's ID card before receiving a court order demonstrating completion of the program. It directs Illinois State Police to issue a FOID card to such a person upon receiving a court-ordered demonstration completion of the program. Specifies that a FOID application made under this provision shall be approved or denied within 10 business days. It's interesting. So Justin Slaughter seeming to want to allow for individuals who have been charged with a crime, who go through a diversionary program, to then be able to apply for a FOID card, even if it's not completely completed, that they have the court documentation that can come later, apparently. So that's advanced. That's Justin Slaughter, Democrat out of Chicago. Another measure that advanced out of committee, the measure from Senator Robert Peters. It deals with office firearm violence prevention. Senate Bill 2280. Let's check this one out. Again, this is through committee, so it could come up on the Senate floor and actually be approved. It amends the Reimagining Public Safety Act, provides that the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention shall issue a report to the General Assembly that identifies communities within Illinois of a million or more residents, municipalities of less than a million residents, and more than 35,000 residents that are experiencing concentrated firearm violence, explaining the investments that are being made to reduce concentrated firearm violence and make further recommendations on how to end Illinois' firearm violence epidemic. So, indication that we have a firearms violence epidemic in the state. Some people would argue that the state has some of the most strict firearms laws. It doesn't seem to be working if we have a firearms violence epidemic. We talked about this one, HB 1316 from Republican State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer. That passed out of committee, and that was a bill that essentially said that if a school official hears of somebody threatening somebody else with an alleged gun, then they have to report it immediately. Might see some changes. And all of this legislation we're going to talk about today, this is just the initial, go. There are going to be amendments, I imagine, for a lot of these, including State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer bill. So continuing on with stuff that they passed out of committee last week, you've got Amy Briel with HB 2548. The synopsis reads, this deals with home assault kits, amends the Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act, provides that it's unlawful for any person to sell, market, promote, advertise, or otherwise distribute a self-administered sexual assault evidence collection kit. So this deals with some criminal justice issues. Moving on, State Senator Doris Turner has a measure dealing with explosives and consumer fireworks. This is always interesting to see how this plays out. Amends the we do have a committee amendment here. So makes changes about consumer fireworks and provisions concerning storage requirements and a variety of other transferring things. So looks like the firearm owner identification card is suspended or revoked if they violate this. And provisions that say people must acquire, possess, use, transfer, or dispose of explosive materials unless the person obtained a valid Illinois individual explosive license issued by the Department of Natural Resources. Concerning qualifications for licensure, provides that no person shall qualify to hold a license who is an unlawful user of addicted or alcohol, so controlled substances as well. So apparently you can't get fireworks if you are addicted to alcohol or controlled substances, or things that fall into the prohibited individuals when it comes to a firearm owner identification card. So that advanced out of a Senate committee. You've got others, the Hostage Tax Postponement Act, State Representative Daniel Didich. I did hear this when it was in committee, and essentially saying that sometimes people get held hostage overseas. If they come back, they could end up finding they have backed taxes that they owe. This would postpone some of that for them so they can get their life situated. There's a measure that impacts Chicago lifeguards. It's not the first swimming one that we'll see here. And that's from Angelica Cuellar out of Chicago. So we're looking at some minimum age requirements for lifeguards. We talked about Cam Buckner's bill that essentially says there's going to be restrictions on how certain warrants can be executed. So we talked extensively about that, and you can find that segment in previous Illinois in Focuses. Back to the swimming category. You got Maurice West, state representative from Rockford, wanting to regulate private swimming pools. Let's see what this says. The Private Swimming Pool Enclosure Act, referred to as Zoe's Law, requires new outdoor swimming pools on private residential property be enclosed by a fence, wall, or other effective permanent barrier for at least 42 inches in height, with openings not more than 2 inches from above the ground. A committee amendment was apparently, let's see here. Committee amendment was adopted. So if you look at the status here, you can see the actions. The committee amendment provides no person may install or construct a swimming pool without a permit issued by the municipality, the county, and such. Provides that each municipality, rather than only municipalities of the introduced bill, shall by ordinance or resolution develop a process to provide the issuance of permits to install swimming pools. So looking to, I guess, have some swimming pool consistency. Then you have a Senate bill, above ground pool standards. So it looks like they're trying to, again, in the Senate, attack this issue as well. The Men's Swimming Facility Act provides the rules adopted to the Department of Health under the act must include unique design criteria and general standards for above ground pools. So again, bringing some standards and best practices, I guess. Another measure dealing with swimming pool equipment from Senator Michael Halpin. Another measure dealing with having swimming facilities get UV protection. This is Janet Yang Rohr in House Bill 3272. And what does this say? It says that it requires all employers operating outdoor aquatic centers to provide access to independently purchased structures that provide sufficient shade to cover the entire body and make reasonable efforts to avoid exposing employees to excessive sun exposure during peak ultraviolet hours. So a lot of summer activity type things going on with the age of lifeguards to how your swimming pool should be constructed. Edgar Gonzalez Jr., state rep out of Chicago, he's got House Bill 3762, creates the Workplace Extreme Temperature Safety Act, provides the Director of Labor shall adopt rules to establish excessive heat and excessive cold standards, sets forth temporary excess heat and excess cold standards. Director shall establish by rule an occupational temperature-related illness and injury prevention plan, and sets forth other provisions and violations and penalties and such. This could be one of those things, if you were to go to any office and you were to ask somebody, is it too hot in your office? They'll say, no, it's just way too cold. And then you'll go to somebody right across in another cubicle and they're like, is it too hot in this office? And they'll say, yeah, it's way too hot in this office. And where do you find that happy medium? And what's considered too cold? I know people who keep their house at 65 degrees. All year, even in the wintertime. They may just turn off their heat and just let a window open so it gets down to 50 some odd degrees. But I know people who like it nice and toasty in their house. But when it comes to a workplace environment, how do you find that happy medium? Not sure. Maybe that's going to try to figure that out. Several other measures dealing with work. Hair braiding licensure repeal. Carol Ammon's looking to repeal the licensure that's for hair braiders through House Bill 3556. Then you've got sunsets all the time with different licensure requirements. Apparently, they got to address the roofing licensing sunset. So that's a measure that advanced out of committee as well. Plastic Bag Reduction Act. This is something that we'll hear even more about as they held a news conference about this last week, and they actually advanced a measure out of committee that would ban single-use plastics and styrene. Let's take a look at this story that Kevin Bessler put together for the Center Square, where he lays out, business groups are worried that that could bring about more costs for consumers. It's the Disposable Food Service Container Act, aimed at banning polystyrene foam containers. Illinois already has a ban on styrofoam foodware at state facilities, but Laura Fine, senator from Glenview, she said that polystyrene, especially styrofoam, poses a significant environmental problem, decomposes slowly, and its tendency to fragment into microplastics and such. So they're looking for legislation and ultimately passed out of committee that would address this. So business groups, National Federation of Independent Business, saying this could lead to increased costs. Let's check out the next couple of bills here that I've got pulled up. The Illinois Sports Facilities Authority measure from Eva Dina Delgado. We've talked about this in the past as well. A lot of conversation about, if tax dollars are going to go to sports facilities, how is that going to be managed? Well, Eva Dina Delgado got this measure passed that ultimately would say if they're going to be giving out tax dollars and tax benefits to sports facilities, they need to consider women as well. So this looks like provides that a person may not, on the basis of sex, be prohibited from participating in or receiving any of the benefits of the program from the Sports Facilities Authority. So we'll see that advance as well, especially in the context of, are we going to get more tax benefits for sports facilities? And speaking of sports, you've got State Representative Maurice West with this bill, House Bill 3527. He held a news conference about this, essentially saying that they want to prohibit discriminatory disability mascots. It restricts a public educational institution from the adoption and continued use of discriminatory disabled mascots. It allows a public education institution to continue to use uniforms or other materials being prohibited in the name, in the logo, or mascot that were purchased on or before the effective date. If this thing was to go into effect, it would go into effect September 1st, 2028. So the news conference they had a couple of weeks ago dealt with the Freeburg Midgets, and said that they had several people there who were advocating for people who are of a shorter stature, that they said they don't like that term, but it's something that, the Freeburg area seems okay with the history of how they got to the name for their mascot, and we'll see how this measure goes. But that's also just one of the almost 1,500 bills that advanced out of committee last week. So hopefully you got a better understanding of the process at the State House. We've got more activity today, and we'll go through some of that. But obviously, it's also going to just be a busy week altogether. All right, so wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, Associate Editor for the Center Square here in Illinois on the ground. Get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com, and also, get the podcast where you get podcasts. Illinois in Focus.